Courtney Pellicero, a student at the University of St. Thomas. This project evaluates the spatial patterns of cholera outbreaks and uses modeling to explore the insights of John Snow. Cholera has a large burden on the global society. The World Health Organization Bulletin published a report on this burden using modeling techniques to estimate and predict the current and future burden. They found that 1.4 billion people are at risk for cholera in endemic countries, and further, every year about 91,000 people die of cholera in endemic countries. Another paper, published by the American Society of Tropical Medicine and Hygiene, also looked at the burden of cholera. Using a reporting database, they explored the reports of cholera worldwide from 1995 to 2005. The researchers found a total of over 484,000 cases and over 19,000 deaths of cholera were reported during this time. Now that we have evaluated the current issues with cholera, let's explore the history of cholera and the study of this disease and its outbreaks. During a TED Talk, Stephen Johnson tells the story of cholera in the 1800s and the role of John Snow, who was an important figure in the study of cholera. In the 1800s, there were many cholera outbreaks in London. The popular belief of the time was that diseases like cholera spread through bad air or smells. These toxic smells were called miasmas. John Snow, a multidisciplinary intellectual and local doctor, did not completely disagree with this miasma theory, but he believed that cholera spread through water. In 1854, a cholera outbreak spread through a concentrated area in Soho, London. He thought an outbreak this concentrated must have spread through a water source, so he investigated. John Snow marked cholera deaths on a map of the area to try to find the point source. This map is known as the ghost map. Here we can see John Snow's map. The map includes the streets of Soho, London. Each black rectangle represents one cholera death. When we see the tall bars of black rectangles, we know there were a lot of deaths on that street and in specific residences. The research goal of this project was to use John Snow's data from the 1854 cholera outbreak in Soho, London, to investigate the spatial relationship between the location of deaths and the location of water pumps. Essentially, we wanted to see if there were more deaths located near a specific water pump. To answer this question, we used GIS modeling. The first part of the model explored the location of cholera deaths. We took the cholera death locations, then used a point density tool to find the density of cholera deaths. Next, we used a mean center tool and directional distribution tool to find the mean center of deaths and the standard deviational ellipse. The goal here was to get insight into where the cholera deaths were centralized. First, we started with a blank map of Soho, London, and then added on the layers of our model. Here we see where the cholera deaths were located. This is essentially John Snow's map. We know where the deaths are, but now we want to look at where the deaths are most dense. Here, the darker the shade of red, the more dense the population of deaths. In the middle, we can see some of the most dense death areas. Now we want to know where the center of these deaths are. Here, the circle represents the mean center of deaths. The circle around it represents the standard deviational ellipse, or in other words, the central distribution of deaths. Now that we have mapped the distribution of cholera deaths, we are interested in the water pumps. We took the locations of the water pumps and then used a Tyson polygon tool to find the general trade areas for the pumps. These polygons map what area people would use a specific pump as their water source, simply because it is the closest water pump for them to reach. Here, the blue circles represent the water pumps. It is hard to miss that one water pump is in the middle distribution of deaths, but we need more information to conclude anything. We need to look at the trade areas. The lines represent the general trade areas. As mentioned before, the people in each polygon would be likely to use the pump within their polygon. This leads to the last part of our model and our last question. What was the mean number of deaths by pump trade area? In other words, Did one trade area have a higher density of deaths? If John Snow was correct, there would be one water source that was infected and where the disease spread from. Likely, this water pump would be located in the center of cholera deaths and be associated with one general trade area. To answer this question, we took the general trade areas and the density of cholera deaths and used a zonal statistics tool to model the mean number of deaths by trade area. Here, the darker the red color, the higher density of deaths by trade area. Not surprisingly, we see that the trade area with the darkest shade of red is where the mean center of deaths is located. Also, we notice that there's a water pump located in this trade area right next to the center point of deaths. So, where's the point source of this cholera outbreak? Likely this highlighted pump on Broad Street. We cannot conclude this was the source with 100% certainty, but the model does suggest this is the case. So, in conclusion, the model does suggest that John Snow's hypothesis was supported. One water pump seems to be the source of the cholera outbreak, and it does seem that cholera spread through water. Not only was John Snow correct, he was also a pioneer in the field of epidemiology with his insights into how disease spreads and his use of mapping as a research technique. Here, you can reference the sources used for this research project. And lastly, the data sources came from Rusty Dotson at the National Center for Geographic Information and Analysis at UC Santa Barbara. Thanks for watching.